The night my father's Aston Martin burned to the ground, I stood barefoot in my driveway, watching 6 years of work go up in flames. No fuel in the tank, no battery hooked up. And yet the fire raged like it had been waiting. And when the HOA's Vice President Karen smiled at me the next morning, like nothing had happened, I knew this wasn't an accident. This was war. Act 1. The Spark. My name's Ryan Maddox. I run a restoration shop, Black Ridge Motors, where I bring cars back from the dead. Ferraris split in half. Bentleys eaten alive by rust. Jaguars forgotten in barns. But the Aston Martin DB4 GT parked in my driveway wasn't just another project. It was my father's. His last build before the stroke took his hands. Before cancer took the rest. Every bolt, every line of that car carried his voice. It wasn't chrome and steel, it was memory. So when Karen Delaney, the HOA vice president, strutted up in her pearls and pastel sweater and slapped a violation notice on my mailbox, telling me the car was a community eyesore, I didn't even blink. She gave me 72 hours to move it. I told her flatly, that car's insured for over 600 grand. I built it myself, and it's not moving. She smirked. The kind of smirk that says she believes her laminated rulebook is stronger than anything else on earth. 3 days later, a second notice came, bold red letters. Violation. Fine pending. I laughed, because I knew she thought people like me just roll over. Most neighbors do. They'd rather pay than argue. But I wasn't raised that way. That weekend, I polished the Aston with the garage door wide open. Neighbors glanced sideways, some whispering, some nodding in quiet support. Karen circled in her silver Audi like a shark, but didn't stop. She didn't have to. Her threat was already planted. And then came the fire. Just after midnight, I bolted awake to the crackle of glass imploding. The driveway glowed orange. Flames curled around the Aston like it was being devoured alive. My wife screamed for 911, but I just stood there, frozen, watching the last piece of my father burn to nothing. The fire department called it an electrical fault, but I knew better. The car wasn't even wired. No ignition, no fuel, which meant someone lit it. Someone wanted it gone. Act 2. The escalation. 2 days later, the HOA sent out a community bulletin, not sympathy, not condolences, just a cold reminder about fire hazards and compliance, as if the fire was my fault. And sure enough, another violation notice hit my mailbox, this time with a photo of the burned-out husk of the Aston, time-stamped, labeled hazardous remains. Remove it in 48 hours or face action. That's when the doubt crept in. My wife Mariah touched my shoulder and whispered, "It's not worth it, Ryan. They're trying to provoke you." And for one brutal second, I thought she was right. Maybe I should just let it go. Maybe I was making everything worse. Maybe the HOA wins, because people like me burn out faster than their bureaucracy. I sat in the garage that night, staring at the scorched concrete, thinking maybe I'd already lost. But then I remembered my father's voice, patient, stubborn, always saying, "A car's only finished when you refuse to quit." That's when I knew I wasn't done. So I started digging. The HOA's pole-mounted security camera faced my driveway. It should have caught the whole fire. But when I requested footage, Karen herself replied, "Unfortunately, the system experienced an outage. No usable footage exists." That was a lie. I knew the vendor. Their system had redundant backups for 7 days, which meant the footage wasn't missing. It was deleted. A crack appeared, and through that crack, I found an ally. Frank Bellamy, the HOA treasurer, quiet guy, always scribbling notes, looked haunted when I cornered him at a community greenhouse event. I pressed him, asked about maintenance invoices for the security system. He didn't admit anything directly, but his silence screamed guilt. He muttered, "I joined to balance budgets, not cover up fires." That was enough. I called in a favor from Devin Rausch, a local branch manager for the security vendor. Off the books. He slipped me an envelope of access logs, and there it was, black and white. Char. 12A. Mimi. The night of the fire. Successful login account. Name K. Delaney. VP command. Manual deletion. Overwrite initiated. She hadn't just lit the match. She tried to erase the evidence. I scanned the logs, backed them up 3 times USB, cloud, private server. If she'd gone this far, she'd go further. And she did. More violations, noise complaints, grass too tall, garage paint non-compliant. She buried me in paper. One night I found "back down or move out" spray painted across my driveway. No signature, but I knew whose hand was guiding it. Meanwhile, Frank slipped me a flash drive mirror logs of Karen's HOA emails. I found the smoking gun. The obstacle in Maddox's driveway will be handled. Sent to her husband, Tobias, 2 days before the fire. Handled, that was her word. I showed everything to Letitia Hayes, my insurance adjuster, a sharp ex-Army investigator. She didn't sugarcoat it. This isn't just a claim anymore. This is liability. Maybe criminal. Karen thought she was suffocating me with notices. She didn't realize she was building my case. Act 3. The showdowns. The HOA called an emergency board session. No public comment. No transparency. Just Karen circling the wagons. But by then, the trap was set. The clubhouse buzzed that night, more residents than I'd ever seen. Karen stood at the podium, smug as always, clipboard in hand. Tobias sat in the front row, arms crossed like a bored bodyguard. She opened with syrupy authority. This board session has been convened to address unauthorized disclosures and procedural clarity. Public commentary is not on the agenda. And then she looked straight at me, a dagger hidden in a smile. But halfway through her agenda, Frank stood up. Calm, steady. "I'd like to introduce a motion," he said, "to postpone all punitive action until external counsel completes its review." He raised a copy of the bylaws, page 14, section 3. Even emergency meetings aren't exempt. Karen froze, tried to dismiss him. But then Frank set down an email, hers, the one instructing the deletion of surveillance data. The room murmured. Karen's eyes darted, searching for control. And then Letitia rose from the audience. Civilian clothes, plain black shirt, but her voice carried steel. "Miss Delaney, I represent Capstone Insurance. Your misuse of surveillance systems and interference with an active investigation are under review by both civil and criminal authorities." Gasps rippled across the room. Letitia placed a white envelope on the board table, right in front of Karen. "This is your formal notice. All communications, financial records, and surveillance logs are now frozen under subpoena." For the first time, Karen's hand shook. The clipboard wasn't armor anymore. It was dead weight. She tried to pivot, tried to censure me publicly, but no one seconded the motion. The board members' neighbors, who once stayed silent, looked at Frank's printouts, looked at Letitia's envelope, and realized the emperor had no clothes. Karen didn't give a closing speech. She didn't smile. She just gathered her papers, clipped them too tightly, and walked out the back door. Tobias trailed after her, face twisted in quiet fury. By morning, her name was gone from the HOA directory. No press release, no apology, just a sterile update. Vice president position, vacant pending election. A week later, their house went on the market. And just like that, the woman who tried to erase my father's memory was erased herself. Closing line. Power built on fear always collapses. Sometimes, all it takes is one person who refuses to back down.